Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today, we're diving into A History of Knowledge, Past, Present, and Future by Charles Van Doren. It's a really fascinating exploration of how we humans have built up knowledge. All the way from prehistory to projections into the 21st century. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, what's fascinating about Van Doren is how he approaches it. He doesn't just list historical events, he actually traces the evolution of knowledge itself, like how our understanding of the world has fundamentally shifted over time.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. And get this, he argues that the 17th century is the most crucial in human history.
Yeah.
He believes figures like Newton and Descartes, they completely revolutionized how we understand and manipulate the natural world, the scientific method, laws of motion, the birth of modern physics.
Absolutely.
But to even appreciate that, let's go back to the beginning. What about ancient knowledge systems?
Okay, well, the Egyptians, for example, they were incredibly focused on maintaining the status quo. They wanted stability above all else. They were even averse to change.
Is that something we still see today? Think about how resistant to change institutions can be.
Absolutely. Bureaucracy, that's a perfect example. But shifting gears a bit to Mesopotamia, we see the power of literacy emerging there. Control over information systems, then as now, is key.
Literacy was like the original information technology, wasn't it? Those who could read and write controlled vital records and communication.
Precisely. And it's interesting that Van Doren points out something kind of quirky. The late discovery of the zero symbol. Even though Mesopotamian civilizations had advanced math, this concept of zero took millennia to emerge. It's a reminder that even seemingly basic concepts can have a long journey.
Okay, that's a great example. Now let's move from the practical to the philosophical. What about those big thinkers in Greece?
Those guys, thinkers like Thales, Pythagoras, and Democritus, they were grappling with some fundamental questions about reality, knowledge, the universe. For example, Thales asked, how can we know the world? That question, it still drives scientific inquiry today.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how these ancient questions are still so relevant. But it wasn't all logic and reason, right? What about religious viewpoints during this time?
Well, Van Doren contrasts views on human sacrifice, for example, in Judaism, Buddhism, and Islam, highlighting a shift in moral understanding that was happening. These religions emphasized compassion and the sanctity of life, which marked a change in ethical thought.
So we've got the Egyptians with their love of stability, the Mesopotamians and the power of literacy, and the Greeks wrestling with those big existential questions. What about the Romans? Did they just inherit all this knowledge and run with it?
Well, they certainly built upon Greek knowledge, no doubt. But the Romans really excelled at practicality. Think about their infrastructure, those incredible roads and their legal systems. Their impact on Western civilization is undeniable.
Right. Van Doren even points to Tacitus. A Roman historian known for his objective writing. He uses him as a contrast to some of today's opinion-driven media. It really makes you think about how we consume and interpret information today. But as with all empires, the Roman Empire fell. What does Van Doren say about that?
He challenges the assumption that decline after catastrophe is inevitable. He compares it to Europe's resilience after the Black Death, for example, arguing that societies can rebuild and reinvent themselves.
So it's not all doom and gloom after empires fall. That's hopeful. Speaking of reinvention, how did the Renaissance and Reformation reshape knowledge?
Well, the Renaissance witnessed a rebirth of classical learning and just an explosion of artistic and scientific discovery. Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man, and Francis Bacon, the champion of the scientific method.
And we can't forget Gutenberg and the printing press. Van Doren argues it was a technological leap comparable to the computer revolution, democratizing knowledge and spreading ideas rapidly.
Absolutely. The printing press revolutionized how information was disseminated. It paved the way for new ways of thinking. And the Reformation kind of furthered this by challenging the Catholic Church's authority. Thinkers like Erasmus and Martin Luther, although they had differing approaches, they played key roles in this upheaval.
So we see a break from the past, but also a continuation of earlier ideas. But if we're talking about setting the stage for the modern world, the scientific revolution has to be the biggest turning point, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it was definitely a game changer. The scientific revolution, particularly the work of Isaac Newton, it just transformed our understanding of the physical world.
Newton's work on gravity and the laws of motion, that's huge. But Van Doren also suggests there might be a downside to Newton's brilliance.
Yes, he argues that Newton's very success may have blinded us to the limits of our knowledge. Maybe we became so enamored with the answers we had that we stopped asking certain questions about gravity and the universe.
So even geniuses can have blind spots. It's a good reminder that there's always more to learn, even about things we think we understand well. What happened after the scientific revolution?
The Age of Reason built upon these advancements. We see the rise of democratic ideals and revolutions in America and France. Thinkers like John Locke, with his ideas on individual rights and government by consent, became hugely influential.
Those ideas are foundational to modern political thought. But moving into the 19th century, what did Van Doren see as the dominant force shaping knowledge?
Well, the 19th century was defined by the rise of money, really, and its impact on social structures, the Industrial Revolution with its incredible technological advances, but also its societal consequences. It brought unprecedented change.
So progress isn't always a straight line toward utopia. Were there any big thinkers who tried to make sense of this rapidly changing world?
This was the era of Darwin and Freud, who revolutionized our understanding of the natural world and ourselves. But as we enter the 20th century, Van Doren points to a more troubling trend: the rise of totalitarianism.
Totalitarianism. Does he connect that to the Industrial Revolution in some way?
He draws parallels between 20th century totalitarian regimes and ancient despotisms, suggesting both were fueled by a lust for absolute power and control. He also links it to the potentially destabilizing effects of widespread equality, citing Tocqueville's observations about the dangers of a power vacuum. And so we stand on the precipice of the 21st century, facing both the promises and perils of new knowledge. What's really interesting is that Van Doren, he doesn't shy away from exploring the future. He actually delves into things like artificial intelligence, the idea of thinking machines. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder, are they going to be helpful tools or a threat to humanity? We've all seen enough sci-fi movies to know how this could go wrong. Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Haha. Van Doren acknowledges those ethical dilemmas for sure. He doesn't give us easy answers, though. He forces us to really consider those implications. Will these advancements elevate us, or could they enslave us?
Those are some big questions to think about. What other kind of predictions does he make about the future of knowledge?
Well, he touches on things like space exploration, venturing beyond our planet, to uncover those mysteries of the universe, and genetic engineering, which raises a whole other set of ethical questions about manipulating the building blocks of life.
It's almost like we're on the verge of becoming gods ourselves, like creating and shaping life. That's a lot of responsibility. Does he offer any guidance on how to navigate these complex issues?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of understanding history, not just as a collection of facts, but as a guide for navigating the future. Learning from the past, both its triumphs and mistakes, can help us make more informed decisions.
So it's not about rejecting progress. It's more about being thoughtful and responsible stewards of knowledge. What does he think about the impact of all this new knowledge on us, as individuals? It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information out there these days.
He doesn't offer a prescriptive set of rules, but he does emphasize the importance of staying engaged, curious, and critically minded. He encourages us to question assumptions, to seek diverse perspectives, and to recognize that knowledge is an ongoing process. It's not a fixed destination.
So it's about embracing lifelong learning, staying curious, and asking those tough questions. He's not just telling us what to think, but how to think, which is cool.
Exactly. He believes that each of us has a role to play in shaping the future of knowledge. He urges us to be active participants, not passive consumers, really engaging with ideas in a meaningful way.
Oh, I love that. It's very empowering.
Absolutely. And within that framework of critical thinking, he reminds us of the importance of the human element. He argues that knowledge, for all its power, is ultimately a human endeavor. It's shaped by our values, our choices, and our aspirations.
So even in a world of AI and thinking machines, it's still up to us to determine what we do with all this knowledge.
That's the core of his message, yeah. He's both optimistic and cautious. He sees the potential for great advancements, but also acknowledges the risks. He leaves us with the challenge to not just amass knowledge, but to use it wisely and ethically.
Okay, so it's not just about what we know, but who we become as we continue to learn and grow. That's a powerful message.
It is. He believes that knowledge has the potential to elevate us, to connect us, and to create a more just and equitable world. But it's up to us to realize that potential. It's a call to action, an invitation to be active participants in shaping the future.
I'm feeling inspired.
And speaking of inspiration, let's go back to that point Van Doren makes about the 17th century. He argues that it was perhaps the most crucial century in human history, because that's when the scientific method, championed by figures like Francis Bacon, became such a driving force in shaping our understanding of the natural world.
So it's not just about individual discoveries, but about a new way of thinking, a new approach to acquiring knowledge.
Precisely. And with the work of Isaac Newton, we saw the birth of modern physics. Laws of motion, gravity, the workings of the universe. It's mind-boggling how much progress was made in that one century.
But then Van Doren suggests that Newton's brilliance might have had a downside too.
Yes, he argues that Newton's very success might have blinded us to the things we still don't understand. About gravity and the universe, it's like we became so enamored with the answers we had that we stopped asking certain questions.
So even geniuses can have blind spots. That's a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah, it underscores the importance of humility and recognizing the limits of our knowledge. There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to question.
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure. From ancient civilizations to predictions about the future. What are some key takeaways from our deep dive into a history of knowledge?
Well, I think Van Doren's core argument is this, that the progress of knowledge itself is a driving force in shaping history. It's not just about events, it's about how our understanding of the world evolves and transforms over time, and that this progress isn't always linear or predictable.
Right. There are leaps forward, setbacks, periods of stagnation, and unexpected breakthroughs. And throughout this journey, there's a constant interplay between the practical and the philosophical, between the need to solve immediate problems and the desire to understand the bigger picture. He also seems to emphasize that knowledge is a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. It has the potential to elevate us, to connect us,
Yeah.
and to create a more just and equitable world. But it can also be misused, leading to conflict, inequality, and even destruction.
So it's not just about accumulating knowledge, but about using it wisely and ethically. That's a big responsibility.
Yeah, and this brings us to a final thought-provoking point, I think. Van Doren highlights that even seemingly basic concepts, like something like the number 0, it took millennia to develop. What does this tell us about our own assumptions? What invisible blind spots might we be holding today that future generations will find astounding?
That's a great question. It makes you realize that our understanding of the world is constantly evolving. What we consider truth today might be seen as incomplete or even wrong in the future, which is crazy.
Exactly. We need to stay open-minded and adaptable.
If you found this deep dive into a history of knowledge fascinating, I highly recommend picking up the book yourself. It's a challenging but rewarding read. That will leave you with a newfound appreciation for the long and winding journey of human knowledge.
Yeah, it really makes you think. And before we go, I just want to remind everyone that if you enjoyed this deep dive into a history of knowledge, be sure to subscribe to the channel. You'll find more insightful explorations of captivating books and ideas just like this one. And don't forget, you can find a purchase link for A History of Knowledge in the episode description. It's definitely worth checking out.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep those minds curious.